Kvaratskhelia steadying himself! A star in the making. And there's the only goal! Sabiri with it! After 11 years, once again, Milan are the champions of Italy.
Ciao ragazzi, and welcome to another edition of Serie A Sit Down, World Football Index's podcast for your Calcio to go. Some of you are probably either having trouble sleeping, a little too antsy, big game tomorrow, so just come on in and talk with us a little bit. Come on in and get into the chat and hang out with us a little. I'm Frank Crivello. He's Richard Carmen. Ciao, Richard.
Ciao, Frank. Drinking a little Vienna lager tonight. It's really good, I actually have to say.
With the spotted cow here tonight, as always. So the nectar of the gods. Anthony's in the chat, as always. First time getting 2 podcasts in 1 week. Well, we have lives, Anthony. That's why we don't do multiple podcasts in 1 week, except Richard and Anthony. Richard getting up at 5:30 in the morning to do a first leg Champions League preview with Anthony, which was really good.
Yeah,
as I said on Twitter, appreciate you not getting me up at 4 or 4:30 in the morning my time. It would have been my worst effort by far in a podcast. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun actually talking to Anthony. Hadn't talked to him in a while. Oh, we were on his podcast not too long ago, but
not too long ago.
Anthony from Inter Worldwide and Football Worldwide. We had a great conversation about the derby and went in depth about it and made our predictions. But always fun to talk to him. And also shout out to Gianni from the Calcio guys helping us last week.
Thank you, Gianni.
In your absence. So you missed the last 2 podcasts, Frank. It's been a while.
I know it has, and I don't know if I'll be. I get work travel next week, so I don't know if I may be able to do next week's. We'll see. We don't know when we'll be on the air next week. A couple of things. Richard chip a tooth? Is that what happened?
I broke a tooth.
Now, how'd you do this?
I don't know, actually. I honestly don't. I
How do you not know? That's kind of something that I would remember if it happened to me.
You would think, but I was like, something feels odd in my mouth. And I looked, I'm like, that tooth is broken in half. Like, you clearly separated. I'm like, oh,
did
God.
You bite down on something, or did you?
I was eating a soft Rice Krispie treat at the time. So I don't know how that would have happened there, but who knows?
Those things can get a little bit rigid. So I can see it.
I don't know.
So. We got the announcer saying at the beginning of the introduction, Richard, that for the first time in 11 years, Milan are champions of Italy. We're going to have next year when we do the sound for the first time in 33 years, Napoli are champions of Italy. So we'll talk about them. Congratulations. We've got many Napoli friends who have been guests on this podcast, listen to the podcast. Excellent people to be around, and very, very well deserving for them to appreciate something, and then very, very well deserving for Napoli. So we'll get into that. Was there some separation with the top 4? We'll talk about the games that were involved that over the weekend that impacted that. Was there separation with relegation? We'll talk about the games that impacted that. And then there were some other games that we'll give some attention to, but not as much as the games that are pretty critical at this juncture. So we will break all that down for you. We've got a big preview of all of the European games. We're going to do it all encompassing on this podcast. You got the Milan Inter preview with Richard and Anthony. You'll have my 2 cents on that game. We'll give Richard a chance to see if he wants to change his mind on his prediction. Now that he's had a few days to digest it and think about it. So we'll give him that opportunity. And then, as always, we end with the world's most popular hashtag game, Who Won Calcio on Twitter. So let's work back, Richard. Napoli.
About time.
Champions of Italy. They are, you know what, and you've got teams in European competitions with great chances to possibly lift some European silverware this season. Inter Fiorentina is going to win the Coppa Italia. That's all well and good. They're all wonderful stories, but I mean, let's not sugarcoat this. Napoli was the signature team of Italy for the 2022-23 season.
Yeah, and arguably Europe. I say it's about damn time, and it's not just because we knew this was going to happen for most of the season, right? It was just a matter of time where statistically they finally clinched it, which happened, this past match week. So congratulations to them. Also, 33 years since the last title, right? 1990 since the last title. So congratulations to them. They are the signature team in Serie A this season, arguably one of the best teams in Europe. Certainly from an entertainment standpoint, this Napoli team is just such a joy to watch. But what Spalletti, who deserves immense credit, and for me, hands down, manager of the year, what he's done with his team, taking a bunch of guys who, Havraschelia, one of the signings of ever, maybe, right? With the performance he did, Osimhen, what he did, Min-Jae Kim, right, coming out of nowhere and kind of filling the boots of Koulibaly, maybe supplanting him, who knows? But this team did such a fantastic job from back to front. Meret, what a fantastic job this season, and the fact that it's what they did was, I say it's historic because it's hard to do what they did. They almost look flawless from start to finish. There's a couple game stretch where they looked human, right? But for the most part, they were consistent and they kept getting the job done every week in out. It wasn't always a goal fest, but they got it done every time, and that's what matters in this. Is you get the results. The players showed up, and one of the guys we said was a key cog for this team the entire season, Lobotka. What a fantastic season he's had himself. He was a monster in that midfield for them, and he is not getting enough credit that he deserves more credit than he's been getting lately. So,
yeah. The highest scoring team in Serie A and the team that has conceded the least goals in Serie A all in one package. I mean, they did everything well, and they did it. They did it over the course of in 34 games right now. 17 points clear right now. They absolutely walked this league. Everything worked, and everything worked from match day one when they went to Hellas Verona and won 5-2. I think that was those were the shots fired from Napoli right off the bat that, hey, it's different. We've got a great team. We can score a bunch of goals. We can keep you out. Maybe that Hellas Verona game. I remember one of the goals in that Hellas Verona game was off of a corner kick, and that can be expected when you're giving Merritt the full-time job. You're working in Min-Jae in the defender position. You don't have things totally, organized in particular moments like that. But they put their foot on the pedal, and lead foot, just boom, and just from match week one, and they never let up. Periods where Osimhen was out, but not for lengthy periods like he had been in previous seasons, which I think was very, very helpful. Yeah. He's the runaway Capocannonieri winner. I find it hard to see anybody catching him at this point. Kvaratskhelia, I think we went into the season saying this guy immediately steps in and has an impact. Yep. Because of the parameters that where we've seen him and who he has played for previously. Yep. That he has not been on a team where there's other talent on the pitch that if you completely key in on Kvaratskhelia, someone else is going to beat you. So you couldn't do that. So with Zielinski from the attacking midfield, and they got just enough. And I think if we've probably been most critical of any position, it's been that right-hand side, whether it's been Politano, whether it's been Lozano, but they got just enough from that position to get there. So we've got Fitcom Media in the house, a blueprint for how Italian teams can go forward. I think you're just seeing you're seeing a lot of attacking football in Italy all of a sudden, over the last few years. And I think that Spalletti is probably one of the, I don't want to call him a pioneer, but he's one of the, he's one of the men behind, this renaissance of how Italian football has changed, with more goal scoring, with more chance creating, with more aggressive attacking. You probably can put Maurizio Sarri in that conversation.
Certainly, yeah.
Stefano Pioli to an extent. Vincenzo Italiano, I would definitely have as part of that discussion. Yes, Gianpiero Gasparini. I think that you can probably make the argument for Dionisi continuing the things the way they're going at Sassuolo. So you're seeing a bit of
Zerbi, right? Another guy.
Zerbi, yeah. And you see don't look at what he did at Brighton yesterday against Everton, but you're seeing a different way, and then that's all leading up to what Roberto Mancini typically likes to do with Italy. He wants possession and he wants to attack and score goals, and right now they have, the national team has shortcomings at the 9 position, which is hindering the rest of the team. But you're seeing things change. You've seen in certain cases, out of necessity, teams going back to some of the old Catenaccio approach and game management that Allegri makes habit of, but you've seen Stefano Pioli go to that regardless of formation. You've seen Simone Inzaghi go to that regardless of formation. You've seen, Mourinho obviously does it a lot. And these are just right now with the state of their teams, this is how they can find ways to win until they can get it back and get into the gear that some of the other managers are at. But Spalletti, he's been doing it this way for a long, long time. This has been his way, and he hasn't apologized for it. He has had teams get battered playing this way. Roma teams that he's had. I mean, I still remember 7-1 against Man United back in 2007. Some of the Barcelona games through the years. So he has definitely taken it in the teeth, trying to coach his teams this way. So for him to finally get a team over the top, I mean, I think this is his moment too, much like it was Pioli's moment last year. Exactly. And it's great to see managers who have put in a near lifetime of work finally get rewarded for it. So talk about Spalletti a little bit here.
Such a fantastic manager. I mean, he always has been. He's always been one of the, like you said, one of the bright minds in terms of attacking and in terms of Calcio. He did it with the Roman teams. He's done it with every team he's managed. It seems like even when he was at Zenit, I did the same thing.
Yep.
And it's always been the bridesmaid, never the bride. He's always something that held him back. He's always found quarrels, whether it's with Totti at Roma, whether it's Icardi at Inter. There's always something that kind of held him up. And we said this going into the season that this may be the most perfect fit for him with players from front to back that he's ever had in Total, and it showed for sure. But I mean, what Spalletti, his stubbornness to continue doing what he loves, and that's attacking football, playing beautiful football, and not being apologetic about it, right? Like you said, he getting battered several times throughout his career. Most managers would change the way they do, but he's like, nah, this is what I want to do. This is how we play. He continued on. He molded it and transformed it here and there, tinkered, the tinker man, to take Ranieri's nickname, tinkered along the way, finally found a team that was perfectly suited for him and kind of let them play, right? Yeah. He didn't do too much. He said, hey, these are what your strengths are. Go for it. And when he had to adjust, he did adjust very well. And this team showed it by the dominance they showed throughout the season from beginning to end. And I think the real sign of intention was, started out the season against some teams that were not necessarily top 7 team talent in the league. When they played Milan for that first time, when Milan was starting out strong, we're going to say, okay, we're going to see who's really what Napoli are made of. And they won at the San Siro, 2-1 or something like that. An impressive performance. But then that game showed that, hey, they are for real. They're here to stay for the rest of the season. And it has continued on. And they built that lead. And eventually, an 18-point lead is insurmountable for anybody. So congratulations to them. And Spalletti deserves all the credit in the world.
Yeah, no doubt about it. By far his most talented team here with Napoli. Osimhen not missing long periods of time. Big part of why this Lobotka coming of age as a midfielder. We've talked about him. I saw Napoli son Sony talking about how nobody talks about Lobotka. I was like, hey, over here, we've talked about him plenty. The leadership of a Giovanni Di Lorenzo, at the right back position.
Mario Rui as well. Yeah.
Mario Rui. I think you could argue that this was one of Mario Rui's best seasons.
Probably was his best season. I would put money that it was his best season.
Would you say the presence of Oliveira motivated him? That's low hanging fruit to make that suggestion, but competition at that position probably, look what it did to Brahim Diaz at Milan. Brahim Diaz you could argue that Brahim Diaz might have had his best season this year at Milan.
Yeah.
Because of Milan bringing in Charles De Ketelare, saying, oh, you're going to bring this kid in to take my job? I want to stay out here a little bit longer. So
that's the argument most teams make when they keep buying players, even though they have good teams, is because they want to make that competition, and competition either brings the best out of you or you find out people who really don't have what it takes. And we're seeing this evident with teams like Real Madrid, right? They just keep buying people and they keep doing phenomenally. But the way Marui, I think, responded when he saw Oliveira, I think you're absolutely right. I think he said, this guy potentially could take my spot. I need to step up my game. And what we saw is by far his best season, not only offensively, defensively, leadership. He just did it from beginning to end, and he deserves a lot of credit, just like Di Lorenzo, for the leadership they provided and the way they stepped up this season. Because frankly, two of the weaknesses were the wingbacks this year for going into the season for Napoli, right?
Yeah,
the whole right side, but in particular the defensive team. The middle, they were going to be okay. Even with Koulibaly leaving, you thought they would be fairly solid with some of the players that they had, but it's left back and right back were the big question marks, and both players definitely stepped up and deserved a lot of credit.
We'll have to see now that the target is on their back. What kind of team are they?
We'll see.
That's going to be very intriguing for me for next year.
We said this about Kvaratskhelia too, right? Like Leao got a big target last year because he won MVP, and then this year he had to find out what it was like to get a target on your back and then adjust, and he overcame that, right? Kvaratskhelia, we want to say he's world class. It's like pump the brakes, right? He was a fantastic season, no doubt about it. MVP.
Oh, I think he's world class.
Let's see what he does next year when the target's on his back. If he can do it again, which I imagine he will, then he's real deal. But we've seen a lot of guys who had phenomenal seasons, Andrea Belotti, and then they could not adjust when the target's on their back, and then they were never the same person as they were that first season. And I think Kvaratskhelia is different from that. I do think he is world class, but he needs to show it with the target on his back that he can do it again, and he will. I believe he will.
Okay. And Fitcom's point, I mean, Merritt had his best season too. I mean, it all came together, and to a point where you can argue that Merritt is probably making a push for Italy #1 over Donnarumma. So, we'll have to see how that battle unfolds as Italy gets games, and we'll see what Mancini does with that position. I think Donnarumma is still going to start, but Merritt's making a case.
And even more importantly, he may have a case to make in our top 11. That's even more important than the Azzurri at the moment.
He might be in the team of the season. We'll break it down. I mean, I don't know. Let's see how this unfolds. Let's see because I think Maignan been outstanding, and Maignan has been in an environment where he's been forced to make some more critical saves than Merritt has done, and I think it might come down to those fine details, when you talk about the league. So, and I think that you need to lump Provedel in that conversation too, in terms of goalkeeper of the season. I think that, and that's a crazy thing to say. Merritt had his best season, but, it's up in the air whether he's goalkeeper of the season with the efforts that players like Maignan and Provedel have put in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can probably argue Maignan for goalkeeper of the season just for what Milan went through when he wasn't fit, when, how much they missed him. I think I made this argument like back at the 2008 Euros. I was having a conversation like through the first round of games, and Italy had lost to the Netherlands 3-0. And so who's the most important? And somebody was asking, so after the first round of games and all the first round of the Euros, who's the most important player? And I said Fabio Cannavaro, because he didn't play for Italy, and it showed. Italy got walked off the park. Yeah. So anyway, Eduardo's in the house. Good to see you.
Thank you, Eduardo.
Good luck tomorrow. We're all friends. Let's remember that. So, it'll be interesting. Targets on their back. To your point, Kvaratskhelia, could he get found out at some point? Teams will spend their off seasons looking at how this Napoli team operate, how they possess and how they move, and how they're going to try to counter it. I think that Pioli clearly had the best blueprint for it.
Yes.
Over the course of time. Yes, they lost that first game at the San Siro, but they came roaring back, knocked them out of Champions League, won 4-0 at the Maradona. So you're going to see a lot of teams looking at what Pioli did to set his team up to win those games and to be in those positions to be successful. So we'll see what happens. But, could be the trendy team to go back-to-back next year. We'll see how all of these teams reshuffle their teams too. So
I think that's a big question mark too, is like usually when a team does well, the Hawks come, the Eagles come and poach, right? And obviously already Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen have been talked about from all the big spending money teams in Europe. So will they be able to hold on? ADL, you imagine want to hold on and try to maybe go for a repeat because this is a team that could very well do it. But if someone comes with a ridiculous offer, like how do you say no to that, right? If someone comes for 150 mil for Osimhen or Kvaratskhelia, that's going to be hard to say no to that. It really is. And you could do a lot with that money if you spend it well. I mean, you only pay 10 million euros for Kvaratskhelia, and that's a great profit off of that. But they got to they have to do some soul searching and figure out what their priorities are coming this off season, especially when that big offer comes, because it will be either Man City, Real, or PSG. One of them is going to offer something crazy, and will he bite? That's the question.
Yep. I mean, and the money that would be coming in for just those two players, you can go out and get 6 or 7 players and just have a really deep squad. So
yeah. I think that's what they need to progress deep into Champions League is a deep squad. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the one critique I would have of them. And
that might have been their shortcoming. I mean, I think that, Spalletti tried and trusted the same guys. Habitually doesn't sub until 70 minutes into the match in most cases, where a lot of guys will do 60. Yeah. And now with 5 substitutions, some guys are off at halftime. But he kept his best 11 out there for as long as he could before he knew it was time to make changes. He didn't really get impatient with subbing. And I think maybe some of that is, and then that might be the one knock you could have against Napoli is, were they really deep? But at the same time, did they have to be when the first 11 played so well?
They probably had, I would say, 15, 16 really good guys, and everybody else of that kind of dropped off because, like, Elmas is a good backup, right? The right side with Politano and Lozano, that could get a real upgrade, wing backs, midfielders. Yeah, Oliveira is good. But, you got Deme, but there's, do they have and Ndombele was okay this year, but do you have enough midfielders to really give the main 3 guys a rest? That's the question mark. So depth is major depth for all 11 guys is what they need. Golini is solid as a backup we saw this weekend, but we'll see what they do and what they decide with when money comes their way.
Yep, exactly. So we'll see what unfolds with this Napoli team. But man, congratulations, all of our Napoli friends out there that are out there. Raf, Ken, I'm leaving people out. Joe Fischetti, even our guy James McNeil, James McGee. I'm sorry, who we had as a guest on years and years ago. I'm sure was certainly enjoying himself, as well as man. If I'm not naming you right now, sorry. Forgive me. There's a bunch of you and you all support the podcast, and we want to thank you guys for that. But congratulations to you. So, all right, well, let's move on. So we had 3 games on Saturday and Sunday, Richard, that had direct impact on the top 4. We're going to move into our top 4 conversation now and try to make sense of what is in front of us after those games have happened. And we begin with Milan opening up on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon in Italy, winning 2-0 over Lazio. The goal of the week happened in this game. It was the second goal of the game. Teo Hernandez, who went coast to coast last year against Atalanta. Atalanta goes coast to coast this year against Lazio. That was in the 29th minute, preceded by a 17th minute goal by Ismail Benacer after some good pressing. That's good scouting by Pioli to know that, okay, you've got a regista that probably isn't your normal regista. Go ahead and press him, force him into a mistake. So 2-0. But the dark cloud here is Rafael Leao having to leave the game about 11 minutes in with a slight, what seems to be some sort of slight muscular problem. The latest today, Stefano Pioli in the press conference today, Richard said that it seems like Rafael's fighting like hell to be available for tomorrow. We'll get into the conversation about the Milan Inter preview, and I think where he falls. I think that worst case scenario, he's coming in as a substitute tomorrow. He might end up being an unused substitute depending on how the flow of the game goes. But Milan fans all held their collective breath when he pulled up after that after that effort. It was an effort going to goal where he pulled up slightly.
Yeah. And this would be one of the all-time ruses of all, if it come out for the Champions League with the roster and he is starting, right? I doubt that's the case, but imagine Inter's faces when they see Leao starting 11, right? But no, I like you. I think he's going to come off the bench. He's going to be fit enough to come off as a sub, maybe 15 minutes or something like that, but certainly not going to start. As I in the preview pod with Anthony from Interworldwide, I said I expect Rebic to be the starter in this one, and probably he's going to be on a short lease, and you probably see Salamakers in very early. On whether it's on the right side or left side doesn't matter, but I think Rebic will get the nod in this one, and he's probably the most capable to fill Leao's shoes, the closest I should say. He's nowhere near Leao, but if other players they have available, he's probably the best that they have to choose from. So that's going to be my guess. And then you probably see Leao probably like last 15 minutes, depending on how the game is going. So yeah, it's a tough loss. Not ideal for Milan heading into the big derby in semifinals of the Champions League, but I guess it could have been worse. He could have been injured for a long time, right? So I guess that's one half full cup there you could take with this injury here.
Sure. And Pioli's not afraid to. I mean, in the last derby, he didn't start Leao either. So, so he's not afraid to. If that's what he has to do, we'll see what happens. Roma and Inter winning at Roma at the Olimpico by 2-0. Fede Di Marco, he just likes to score on Roma. He does it again. Yep. Getting on the back end of a Denzel Dumfries cross in the 33rd minute, and then the 74th minute. Some very poor play out of the back by Roma. Lautaro ceases on it, plays in Lukaku. About as easy a goal as Lukaku's going to score. Yeah. But I mean, you got to seize those opportunities. Ask Ketelari if he would like to have that chance back against Cremonese in particular. So, yeah. 2-0 win to Inter, and then on Sunday. Juventus vaults into second thanks to the Lazio loss and their 2-0 win over Atalanta. A great moment in the 56th minute. Samuel Ealing Jr. getting his first Juventus start and getting on the score sheet. And then in the 98th minute, it was Dusan Vlahovic on the counter as Atalanta were trying to press to tie the game. Juve go the other way. It is Vlahovic from Chiesa, 98th minute, curling goal. To give Juventus the win. So this sets the table for the top four chase. Juve is in second on 66. Lazio in third on 64. Inter fourth on 63. Milan fifth on 61. Atalanta 58 points in sixth. Roma 58 points in seventh. Let's begin with Atalanta and Roma. Is it a bridge too far for them now? 5 back with 4 to play.
I think so. Anthony and I talked about how with Roma in the semifinals and potential of the finals of the Europa League, that's a lot on their minds at the moment. And so they're going to, Mourinho's going to want to try to do well in that tournament. And so I do think it's a bridge too far for them. It's not to say, no matter, even if they don't finish in the top 4, this was a fantastic season considering what they did in Europe. With the league too. This year, the talent in the league with the top 7 teams has been phenomenal. So any team in the top 7 team deserves kudos this year, despite where you fall. So I think it's a bridge too far for them. Atalanta too. This is their only tournament to play in. Yet they, time and time again, when it matters, it seems like they can't get it done. And they could have used a draw in this to stay alive mathematically, but I think that all but seals that their fate in the top 4 at least. Which is unfortunate for them because they've been coming on really well. Dufan Zapata started playing really well with the assist and got a goal the week prior. Obviously, Pasalic and the rest of the guys have been having a good season, but they just, for whatever reason, can't get it done. It's, Gasperini not being able to adjust in the big games. I don't know, but I think both those teams are out of the top 4 contention here.
Yeah. Atalanta's running. I mean, still, let's remember this. They're at Salernitana. They host Hellas Verona. They're at Inter. They host Monza. So if they can win all of those games, that includes a win over Inter, it's not out of the question. But it is 5 points is a lot to make up with only 4 games left. Exactly. So last week I thought because of their run-in that they would snag 4th. But they couldn't get it done against Juve. A Juve team that has not been good away against good teams in Serie A and not been good away in general. And when you look at Europe, So they had their chance there, and I think that that's going to be too difficult. I agree with you. I think Roma's in Europa League mode here at this point. Mourinho. You look at the rest of Roma's games. You look at their run-in. Obviously, the Bayer Leverkusen games, which are going to be very intriguing.
Yeah.
But they go to Bologna, which is going to be a tough task. They go to Fiorentina, which is going to be a tough task. Their home games are Salernitana and Spezia. They could be getting a Spezia teams just absolutely fighting for their lives on the last day, depending on how things play out. So, it's not the friendliest of run-ins for them, and 5 back with 4 to play for them. I think if one team out of these two have a better chance just simply out of run-in, it's Atalanta, and with Roma having the Europa League distraction.
Agreed.
That's just kind of where I'm at. And you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think it's Atalanta have nothing else to play for, so they'll be more invested, I would think, in the league than Roma with the other distractions around them.
Okay, so it's Juventus right now that are 5 points up with 4 to play. And let's just, assuming the legal ramifications and the courts don't throw them out of Europe. They host Cremonese, they're at Empoli, they host Milan, they're at Udinese. I think when you think about the teams that are sitting, okay, Milan's on 61 points. I think they beat Empoli, they beat Cremonese, and then at that point they just need one more point to secure their Champions League place. I think Juve's in.
Yeah, I think they're getting a minimum 9 points out of that run there. So, I think they're definitely one of the ones that are guaranteed in the top 4.
Yep, and assuming UEFA doesn't say, hey, we don't like some of the things that are going on here, you can't play in our competitions next year. So I think if there's anything legally being done in Italy, it's going to affect them next year. It doesn't sound like it's going to happen this year. So just something to kind of keep track of. We go to Lazio in 3rd. All right, let's break down their run-in. Hosting Lecce, at Udinese, hosting Cremonese, at Empoli. I think this might be as easy a run-in as you can ask for right now to be on 64 points. The game at Udinese could probably be a tricky one for them, but there's 9 points in play. So, but if they can win the other 3, again, that's 73 for them. That's 73 for them, and at 73, they're going to be in. I think Lazio's in at this point. What do you think?
If they can stay out of their own way, they should be in the top 4. I am unconvinced at the moment with Lazio. They've been playing very well in 2023, fully deserving to be in the top 4, but there's moments where you're wondering, like, what the hell are you thinking? And granted, the loss to Milan is not one of them, because that's a good team they lost to, but they play some of the other teams that they should be beating, and then they get a draw or a loss, and it's like, what? So I'm not fully convinced with Lazio just yet. I think they're one of the teams they're a bubble team for me. I'll put it that way. They're a bubble team.
Udinese might still have something to prove. Empoli, I think, might be hitting the beach at some point now. Empoli have won 2 in a row, though.
Yeah, they looked really good last week, too. So
yeah, and they beat Salernitana, they beat Bologna, so maybe they might still want to try to put together some wins and make one last push. On the but we get to that last day, and there's going to be some teams that'll just mail it in. That's just how it works. I think 4th comes down to Inter and Milan right now with those 2 points, with that 2-point margin. I mean, I think that's how fine everything is at this point. Inter in 4th. They've obviously got the 2 Milan games. They host Sassuolo in between those, bogey team for them. They go to Napoli. Then they've got the Coppa against Fiorentina. Then they host Atalanta, and then they're at Torino. So this is still a very brutal run-in for them. I mean, combination of quality of strength of schedule, number one, but also the extra fixtures that they're in on top of it. I still think they can drop points and fall out of this.
No, that's true. I think both Milanese clubs have been up and down for the longest time. They look really good in Europe, but in the league, you never know each week what you're going to get, and you can get a performance like you did with Inter this past weekend where they won 2-0 and look phenomenal, and you get other times where they get a draw and you're like, how did they same thing with Lazio, right? And they're very much a bubble team. I mean, I think for sure, if nothing else, I think the more likely scenario is one of the Milanese clubs doesn't make it.
Right.
And you could have a situation where one of the teams misses out, but they win a Champions League. That's also a in the realm of possibilities. But yeah, I mean, between the two Milanese clubs right now, I think who's playing slightly more consistent in the league, just in the league, it's probably Inter. So I would tip them the favorites at the moment because that's a lot of points for Milan to overcome, but it's doable. We'll see where their heart is, and at the moment, it seems like a Champions League. So
yeah, it's that one's going to be interesting, and then you finally get to Milan, who sit in fifth. And you obviously have the two games with Inter. They're at Spezia, they host Sampdoria, they're at Milan, and then they host Hellas Verona.
Yeah, that's a not easy schedule by any stretch.
Going to Juve is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
They might get a Hellas Verona on match week 38 that's already secured safety for next season.
Maybe, yeah.
At Spezia, but we've seen them and then a Sampdoria team that's relegated. So, yeah. I mean, give me Milan's run in all day over Inter's down the stretch.
Sure, but we see the way Milan does better against the top 7 than they do against the bottom 5.
Right.
For whatever reason, it's a major brain fart for them, which could ultimately cost them that Champions League spot. They would need to win those games. Can they do it? Yes. Have they proved it lately? No. And that's the thing for me. It's again, as with Lazio and Inter, there's a lot to not trust with this team in the league. In Champions League, I am fully confident in this team. They know how to play, but they can't translate that same style of play into Serie A. Granted, they're more than likely they are the favorites in the games when they play in Serie A versus Champions League. They tend to be the underdogs, but notwithstanding, they don't get the same results week in and week out consistently as some of the other clubs. So yeah, it's a hard for me. Milan does have the easier schedule. They make it easier for them. They need to win out, and then hope everybody else fall into place with dropping some points. But that's the best case scenario: is they need to win out and hope teams around them just drop huge points, whether it's Inter or Lazio. But a very good team is going to miss out on top 4, whether it's Lazio, Inter, or Milan. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. And then again, we could have all 3 make it somehow just by winning Champions League.
I'm not convinced that Milan are over their finishing problems after the 2-0 win against Lazio as well. Yeah. I mean, I think I laid this out for everybody after the Cremonese draw. They've had, in the 4 draws that they've had, and that was Cremonese, Bologna, Salernitana, and Empoli. Yep. They had 84 shots in those 4 games. They only came away with 2 goals. Or 3, I think it was 3 goals. There's 3 1-1 draws and a 0-0. Yeah. Okay, so 3 goals. And I think that their expected goals per game, on average for those 4 games, was nearly 2 per game. So that is a clear dropped 8 points right now. That it's one of those simple things. Finish your chances and you're on 69 points and you're in 3rd place and you've got some breathing room. But that's what it's going to come down to, the fine details and the lack of, if Milan don't qualify for top 4, they don't qualify over a lack of finishing. Okay. And a lack of being clinical around the goal, especially against bottom half opponents, where when you watch Inter, when you watch Napoli, they don't mess around. They take care of those teams.
Let me ask you
this.
Lazio
to an extent too.
Let me ask you this. I said on the Champions League preview pod with Anthony that Pioli's job is safe. He makes top 4, win or lose in the semifinals of the Champions League. It's a successful season. His job is safe. However, if he doesn't make the top 4 and they don't make it at least to the finals of the Champions League, is his job safe for next season, considering what is expected of Milan?
Now, it's interesting living in Milwaukee because I've kind of gone through this, and I just went through this scenario already being a Bucks fan. They fired Mike Budenholzer earlier, was it late last week? Mm-hmm. After he coached the Bucks to the best record in the league. and they go out in the first round of the playoffs to a very good Miami Heat team who is going to eliminate the Knicks and get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
He won an NBA championship 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But a lot of Bucks fans around here are just very dissatisfied with a lot of his in-game adjustments, his timeout management, and things like that. And things got to a boil where the upper management not necessarily listened to the fans, but also drew the same conclusions, and fired him. Made him the fall guy for the Bucks not qualifying beyond the first round in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with that. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree that you fire Pioli.
Yep.
Not because I'm trying to keep up a fight against a bunch of people on Milan Twitter, but because I legitimately don't know how you fire a manager who has progressively gotten us there with the resources that Milan have worked with up to this point. Okay. 2 years ago, fourth qualify for the Champions League. Last year, win the Scudetto. This year, semifinals of the Champions League with a real chance of making the final. I don't know how you sack a manager who's made that kind of progression. When you win a Scudetto,
yeah,
can you go any higher in the league?
In the league, no.
Yeah, so. And I understand Milan fans' frustrations that they'd want to still see top four if they can't win the Scudetto. I do too. But when you look at the competitiveness, the top third of this league, there's parity within the top third of this league. Set Napoli aside, who had an outlier of a season this year.
Yeah.
But there's parity here.
Yeah.
You right now, you look at England right now. There's now parity among the top 8 teams in the league. Okay.
The bottom 10.
Yeah. Arsenal is dragging Manchester City to the last day. Liverpool is trying to fight like hell to get back into the top 4 after being mid-table most of the season. This isn't just happening in Italy. This is happening all over Europe.
Yeah.
Okay. The same 4 teams aren't going to get in every year. It's just, and I think that's the nature of football right now. So when in the 07-08 season, Milan failed to qualify for Champions League. They finished 5th. Did they sack Ancelotti? No. That was the year after they won the Champions League in 07. Yeah. So, in
the same vein, I would think I agree with you, and I would think that Inzaghi's job is safe. But it's funny because I think Interisti feel the opposite, right? So we as Milanisti. Oh, I should say we, but the team, the hierarchy feels that Champions League is a priority, not the league.
Yeah.
Inter and many other teams, right? Their priority is the league. And so for Inter fans, they feel like if they don't make the top 4, they're not winning Scudetto. That is a failure of a season. Yeah, we made the Champions League, but that's just, that's icing on the cake. You failed in the season. You need to go. And I think the consensus seems to be that Inzaghi's out. And I think it's a similar season to Pioli. I think his job should be safe based on what he's done, what he's taken the team to the semifinals of the Champions League on top of everything else, and Coppa Italia finals. But the history will probably tell you that he gets fired and someone else comes in.
I can't remember who responded. I can't remember who responded to me, but it was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen tweeted. And I don't want to make fun of anybody. It's like you sack Pioli and let upper management figure it out. No, you're telling me you want to sack Pioli. You better tell me who the replacement is. You don't just get out of it and say, let upper management figure it out.
No.
Sack Pioli, sack Maldini, and let upper management figure it out. No. If you're making that take, you better tell me who's out there that is going to do better. Yeah. Because I look around the landscape right now, and I don't know who does better. Assuming that Roberto De Zerbi is not getting out of Brighton anytime soon to come back to Italy and coach at Milan. That would be the one guy I would want, but with the impact that he's made at Brighton, I think it's going to be very, very hard for him to leave.
Interisti have their eyes on somebody, and a name escapes me at the moment, but there's somebody they have in their mind who can replace
Thiago Motta.
He's one of them. He's one of them. Conte is another name. There's another guy, but anyway, they have somebody in mind who they think they can replace. Versus Milan, like who are you going to put in there? Like I can't think of anybody.
Yeah. You can sit there and say sack Pioli out, but that's great. And we had this argument. We've argued with Milan on Twitter multiple times talking about this topic. You can say Pioli out, but okay, fine. Go ahead and say that. Who are you getting? Be realistic. And that's going to be better. Okay? Because that's the other side of the equation. You don't think Cardinali's evaluating that? You don't think Maldini's evaluating that? They don't like looking at their short list and saying, is he really better than what we've got? No, probably not. That's part of their job. And same thing with the Interbrass. They're probably looking at their short list right now saying, doing the if-then with Inzaghi, right?
Right, exactly.
And they've got to ask themselves the question, is there somebody better than Inzaghi? Did Antonio Conte burn that bridge? He probably did.
He probably did.
Because to me, he would be the only ideal replacement given the personnel that's there at Inter. But
the financial constraints are going to break at his heart because he likes to buy people, and Inter can't even afford a sponsor. By the way, I love that. I love when and I agree with Anthony, the kit with no sponsor on it. I do like how that looks on most teams. Roma did it for a while too. It does look good. But
that's old school, man. That reminds me of, European Cup finals. You couldn't wear the sponsor on your shirt.
Yeah,
like all the way up until it, but they didn't have him on the shirt for the finals.
With all the financial issues going on at Inter, that's going to be a hard sell for Conte. Yes, the team. You're right. The team is perfect for him, but he wants to always have reinforcements. He always wants more. Well, give me more, give me more. They're not going to be able to pay that. They might not be able to pay players. So, that's going to be hard for me to believe that he goes there until it becomes official. Thiago Motta is more something I would believe versus that. But, it's interesting. We'll see how it all shapes out. I mean, this could all be a moot point if Inzaghi or Pioli win the Champions League this year.
Right.
And they would give keys to the city and, bunga bunga parties left and right, if they choose.
For sure. So we're just trying to talk the casual, and it's like sacking the manager is not always the answer. And in some cases, sacking the manager could actually set your team back and make it worse than make it better. And that actually is the example. That's actually the rule more often than the other thing.
Manchester United, Ranić.
As Manchester United, what's Manchester United done since Ferguson's left?
Yeah. I mean, they've done well with Ten Hag. I think he's a good appointment, but I think Ranić was a big example. They brought him in, and they went really way down past what Old Gunnar was doing. So, it's more than likely you're gonna regress versus progress if you bring in a new manager. And
what about Milan after Ancelotti? Okay, Allegri came in and won a Scudetto, but it fell out of control, and some of that was the financial constraints with which Berlusconi and Galliani were working with that had a lot to do with it. But then they went crazy and they tried to retread former players. So we'll, who knows?
Cool.
Stadio della Roma is finally getting approved.
About time.
6 years later.
Yeah. Better than ever. I guess Mourinho agreed to stay another year, so they said, "Hey, we'll finally build you that stadium." I guess.
So that kills the Mourinho to PSG talk then.
Yeah, maybe. Hopefully,
man,
Mourinho needs to stay in the league. I think he does. He makes Roma so much better. I think Roma have proven that they are a European contender with Mourinho. They did last year. They won the title in Europa League, and Conference League. This year they could potentially do it in Europa League. And if they win Europa League, maybe go to Champions League. We could have 5-6 teams in Champions League. No, I don't know. We'll probably have 5 teams in Champions League, maybe. If we're lucky.
Roma have a spine.
That's it.
I mean, can you imagine even the Feyenoord tie here in the quarterfinals? Can you imagine? And I know Di Francesco put it together to beat Barcelona, and everything came together perfectly. For them to go through, and then they gave Liverpool all sorts of trouble before they just ran out of time.
Yeah.
But the previous Roma managers before Mourinho, could you have seen them managing their way through that against what Feyenoord can do?
No.
No. I mean, he was the one guy that is perfect. He's perfect for Roma. Yes. He's brought a solidity to that team. He's brought a spine to that team. They're a tough team to play against all of a sudden.
He's brought good attention to Roma too. Yes.
there's still a fragility to Roma that creeps up from time to time, but you see it less and less.
Yeah.
So, so definitely. But yeah, it's it's going to be interesting, and I think that Gasparini, despite regardless of how Atalanta finish up, I think he's getting another year. I don't think there's anything to worry about there. And then and Sadi's done an outstanding job with Lazio, and now you give him another transfer window, let him filter in more players. They're the interesting team next season. If they can hang on to guys like Milinkovic, Savic, Luis Alberto, he's got kind of that big three. Felipe Anderson has come through like gangbusters for them in his second stint at Lazio. Do something about the fullback positions.
And Regista.
And I think Cataldi made strides this year.
Sure.
Okay. Vecino's a reasonable and
backup.
Serviceable backup. But yeah, you can improve the Regista position too in that setup. So
yeah. Well, since you've last been on our podcast, both Frosinone got promoted, and even more recently, Genoa back in our lives in Serie A once again.
Ooh,
so that means
Grifoni are back.
The Grifoni are back. So that means somebody has to go down. We learned about one team this weekend, that are not going to be with us next season in Serie A. Relegation battle, hot and heavy this weekend. Sampdoria punched their ticket to Serie B this weekend.
Or did they have their ticket punched for them?
they got a ticket punched for them. Unfortunately for them,
they're so dead. They don't have. I don't think.
I hope they keep Stankovic. I hope they keep Stankovic in Serie B because I think I want to see what he can do with them. Whether he wants to stay or not, that's another question. But we'll start with them. Udinese hosting Sampdoria. Udinese win 2-0 goal. Nice chip over the goalkeeper by Pereira in the 9th minute. Massina followed up in the 34th minute with a nice header of a goal. 2-0 Udinese win that game. Going back to Saturday, Cremonese, who have come on of late, right? They had a nice draw against Milan, had some nice wins recently. Ocareke's come on like gangbusters. They win 2-0 against Spezia. Spezia all of a sudden in the drop. Goal by Ciofani in the 41st minute, and then Vasquez in the 77th. Cremonese, an impressive win when we all thought they were done and dusted like Sampdoria, are now only 3 points behind Spezia for that playoff spot. So we'll see. Playoff spot. They're 3 points behind Spezia. I'm gonna say that, and then I'm moving on to Sunday. Other relegation, big game. Lecce hosting Hellas. We know this is a big game. We talked about it. Hellas is a team that has too much talent to go down. They've, for the time being, are out of the relegation fight, or out of the bottom three, I should say. Goal of the week candidate by Ngonje in the 71st minute. Nice goal from distance to beat the Lecce goalkeeper. Falcone did everything he could, but that was a nicely placed, nicely powered shot by Ngonje. Lecce tried as they might. Montipo was up to the effort, and Hellas with a big victory on the road for them, up to 30 points now. Like I said, out of the bottom three, and back onto Monday. I guess Salernitana. I guess you talked Salernitana and Empoli. Empoli won 2-1. Salernitana are fairly safe, as are Empoli. Goals by Cambiaghi, scores again. This guy's on fire for 4 goals in 3 games. Caputo also scored in the 63rd minute. Piante got a consolation goal for Salernitana. Ochoa played fantastic once again, but Empoli win that game. So of the relegation 3, I mean, we got, like I said, a new bottom 3 because, Sampdoria is relegated. And then Spezia now joined the bottom 3, and Hellas go out. So where do you want to start with that bottom 3?
I'm doing victory laps because I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks that Verona are going to get out.
Yeah. And
here they are in 17th. So, so happy for them, happy for Ngonje who scored. Their form's been good. And let's look at Hellas Verona. I mean, they've got wins, not just Lecce, but they beat Bologna and Sassuolo in this run, and they drew Napoli. And then they drew Cremonese, who at the time was a direct rival. They took the beating to Inter.
Yeah.
I mean, but let's just face it. Hellas Verona punted that game knowing that the Lecce game at the weekend was more important.
Yeah.
You just sometimes just see that in teams. It's still a bit of a challenge for them from a run-in standpoint, but I think they can go and beat Empoli at home, which puts them at 33, which I think gives them enough to get over the line and qualify. I think hosting Torino, if they can win that, here this Sunday. They're in. They're good to go. I still think 31-32 is the cut. So Verona need one more win. They're at Milan at the end. They host Torino, at Atalanta, host Empoli, at Milan. So it's obviously entirely probable that they get through on that. Because when you look at Lecce's run in, at Lazio, hosting Spezia, at Monza, hosting Bologna. I mean, and it's still entirely possible that Lecce could outlast Spezia. Again, we say it, May 20th. Lecce and Spezia is huge right now. In terms of the run-in. It was a game that Lecce had a little bit more of the ball. They certainly got a lot more chances, but it was the Ngonje goal that got it done. We like this kid Ngonje, by the way.
Yeah.
Talented player, not somebody that's going to like break into a top 7 team or anything like that in this league, but somebody that can still be serviceable and be a kind of player that can give some trouble. So he had a pretty decent scoring record when he was playing at Groningen in the Eredivisie too. So good to see that. Good to have a prediction go right for me.
You hear about the mess that Sampdoria is in?
What is that?
Besides relegation, they may go bankrupt. The fans have been protesting against the management for a while now, but if it happens where they do go bankrupt, they will be forced to go down to Serie C or Serie G or Serie D, which would be massive blow to them. In recent memory, teams who've had similar issues went down. Right, Parma went down, Palermo went down, a few others went down as well. So that would be terrible for the Genovese club if they had to go down to Serie D or Serie C. On top of getting relegated this season. So not only do their direct rivals get promoted at the same time, they may go way down, which would be unfortunate for them. So we'll see what happens here in the coming weeks.
Ugh. Ferrero spending too much money on cocaine?
Probably.
So, Cremonese, we probably should be nice to here because they're mathematically still in it, and their form has actually been pretty good of late.
Yes, it has.
They had the ugly loss to Udinese, but they beat Empoli, they beat Samp. They drew Fiorentina in the Coppa in the second leg. I mean, they're ultimately knocked out there, but then they drew Hellas Verona, drew Milan, beat Spezia here. But I think the best they do is 30 points, which isn't going to be enough. With going to Juve and Lazio among their run-in. They host Salernitana at the end. They host Bologna in between those trips to Juve and Lazio. So, I mean, it's worth noting the form that they're in as they're trying to work their way out. I think they're just out of time.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because there's some pretty good players on that team. Guys with Serie A experience. I mean, we've always liked Okereke. We just wish he could get on a better team. He just always finds his way on these teams that go down. Ciofani's got some talent. I like the wingbacks on Cremonese as well. Nicola in particular. Yeah. Valeri's been good. So there's some talent on this Cremonese team. It just took a long time to come together, and it's just too late based on kind of where I think they're going to end up. So, but certainly worth bringing into the conversation. And then you have Spezia. When did they play?
They play Cremonese.
That's right. They lost to Cremonese.
Hopefully Nzola's with the top 7 team next year.
Yeah, Nzola's going to come really cheap.
Yeah.
Hosting Milan at Lecce, hosting Torino at Roma. Ouch.
Oy.
I mean, they're on 27. They may get the 3 against Lecce, and that's it.
Arrivederci.
Yeah, I think it's more and more likely that Spezia is 18th and going down, not just because they're sitting there now, but I look at the run and I don't see how, even if they do beat Lecce,
it's going to be hard.
And that game got moved to May 21st. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was May 20th. They have moved that game now to May 21st at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time.
Primetime game at 6:30 a.m.
What? Serie A, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing?
Napoli, Inter. I mean, for Inter for the top 4, but I mean, like,
I would have watched that at 8 a.m. I would have watched that at 8 a.m. on the 20th. I don't know.
that should be the main game on that day.
Yeah, because that's going to decide 18th. I would have put that at a game time where everybody could see it, because there's a lot on the line with those two teams.
Oh yeah.
And I think that would have drawn an audience. So
yeah, at least the two of us.
Yeah. But now I got to watch it at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So
it could be podcasting at 5:30 in the morning with me, right? And Anthony.
Listen, if I'm not getting up to do a podcast with you and Anthony, I'm not getting up to watch Lecce and Spezia. I'll just catch the replay. I'll just catch the replay. So
fair enough.
I think, wasn't it the one I was when Parma played, who was it? It might have been Lecce, or I can't remember. Was it a couple of years ago when Parma went Serie A, and I said I'm watching Parma versus Lecce, so you don't have to, or something like that. And then our guest who we had called me out on it. So
do a watch along, let's do a watch along.
Yeah, do a watch along. I'm not doing a watch along at 5:30 in the morning my time. I don't have my thoughts. Trying to let the caffeine kick in.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work. So Daniel Maldini would go back to Milan if Spezia goes down. That's true. So
go back on loan.
I think looking at all of the run-ins, I mean, can we conclude that Spezia is going to be 18th?
I think so.
I might even say they're 19th and Cremonese will finish 18th.
It's possible, yeah. I mean, I hope Lecce survives. I think they're a good story. Good team. They're fun to watch. They got some really nice playmakers on the team, and just a good story in general. And their fan base is amazing. It'd be tough for them to go down so fast. I think they deserve to stick it out another season, see if they can improve upon this one. So we'll see.
Yep. Other 3 games that took place. Torino and Monza could have played in a parking lot and no one would have cared. Came in at 1-1.
Yeah.
It was Sanabria and then Caprari going there. Napoli and Fiorentina. This game deserved to be played at the Maradona for all of the reasons. But Napoli go ahead and win that 1-0. A penalty for Victor Osimhen, who now is what's his total now for Capo Canonieri?
Many goals. I don't know. 20. I want to say 23.
Thanks. Many goals.
Yeah, I want to say 23. Is that right?
Yeah, 23 is correct. Okay.
There it is.
So he adds to his tally. Probably, I'd say he finishes with 4 games left. We'll see how much he plays. Okay, maybe a goal a game. Let's give him 27 to finish the season. So let's project him for that. And then finally, it was Sassuolo and Bologna, another game that could have been played in a parking lot and no one would have cared. Domenico Berardi in the 15th minute, canceled out by Nicolas Dominguez in the 42nd.
Yeah.
That's all the time we need to devote to those games, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. Did you have a top 5?
I have a 1. Theo Hernandez.
Okay, fair enough. That's I think overwhelmingly hands down number 1 pick for the week, possibly the year too. I go honorable mention Ealing Jr. for Juventus. I thought he had a great performance and great play on that goal that he ended up scoring. Nice. Number 5 for me, Caprari's team goal. I thought that was a wonderful team goal in general by Monza. Monza. Wonderfully done there. Number 4, Terracciano's penalty kick save on Osimhen before the second penalty. So that was the second penalty in the game. Number 3, I'm going with Benacer, going with the homer pick there. Nice volley, nice play to intercept the ball. Giroud, nice pass to him, and he got the volley. Number 2, Cyril Ngonji, his winner, wonderful goal from distance. And the number 1, obviously, Theo Hernandez solo goal. I mean, someone put a video of last year's goal against Atalanta versus this one. It was like almost identical run. I think last year's a little bit better, but still, it was a fantastic goal.
I'll just go with your top 5.
Perfect. Beautiful. I love it when we agree.
I saw all of them. I thought they were all very good goals. But when you have one that just stands out over all of the other ones, it's just kind of...
It's like, why play more, right?
Yeah. Why throw in any more? So... Yeah. Okay, so we have gone through the Serie A table. Let's once again talk about Milan and Inter. First leg, Milan is the home team tomorrow. Inter is the home team for the second leg next Tuesday. So for those that have not caught the podcast with you and Anthony, maybe share some cliff notes of what you guys discussed real quick, and then I'll give my take of what I think the game's going to be.
The Cliffs Notes basically are that both teams are coming in fantastic form in Europe. Both teams are playing very well defensively. Inter has a little bit better of a goal scoring streak in Champions League at the moment. Both managers are we call cup merchants, guys who just do very well in the cup games. They play. They know how to play in these kind of style games. New avenue for both of them, right? Semifinals of the Champions League. That's a big much to do for these guys. Now these guys have been that level before. We kind of feel that this game's gonna be very conservative. Both managers, both teams don't want to make the big mistake, and so the first leg is going to be very much feeling out. If you get a goal in this first leg, that'd be very surprising. I think it's going to be defensive work by both teams. Who's going to let the other team have the ball? Both teams like to play counter-attacking style football at the moment. You would imagine Milan probably have more of the ball, but who knows? But it's going to be a tight game. No one's going to make many mistakes, I think. Maybe some yellow cards. But we predict a draw in this first. Well, I think both of us predicted a draw in this first game. I think we both went 0-0, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here are a few thoughts that I have here. First of all, if people are looking for this to be an advert for Serie A, don't.
No.
Watch Serie A games because this is a completely different set of circumstances. I think
watch for the tifos. The tifos are going to be fantastic.
They're going to be at the top of their game tomorrow, and I'd be disappointed if they're not.
Yeah.
Today's game with Real Madrid and Manchester City was an extremely high level of football. I thought it was an extremely well played game between both teams. And Michael Lisi will appreciate me saying this because I agree with what he had to say on Twitter. It was also extremely well officiated. There are a lot of moments where a lot more inexperienced referees would have pulled out a lot more cards. This guy governed the game beautifully and didn't let it be about him. But then at the same time, I thought, two teams that played each other at a very high level. I think you're going to see a very high level of football tomorrow too. I think you're going to see a different approach. I think you're going to see two teams playing to avoid the mistakes. I think you're going to see two managers that are going to approach this as if this is a 180-minute match. It's not a 90-minute match.
Correct.
And they're going to play accordingly. I think you'll see risks getting taken here and there. And I think that I expect Inter to be the team that maybe takes a couple more risks early.
Yeah.
To try to take some shots at a Milan that probably will not have Rafael Leao in their starting lineup. Okay, I think we project him as a sub. I'm looking at SofaScore. SofaScore projects him as a sub. SofaScore is projecting Brahim Diaz actually to play in Rafael Leao's spot with Salamakers on the right, not Rebic. So we'll see what Pioli ends up deciding to do. He has Benacer in kind of that false 10 role with Tonali and Krunic behind him. So if Milan take an advantage into the second leg, it's because Sandro Tonali bossed the midfield.
Yep.
Okay. That's where I think that Milan have to get the foothold. They have to get midfield superiority. Somebody said in the chat, the better midfield might win this game and take a lead to the second leg. Yeah. If for Milan to have a chance to do that, Sandro Tonali has to dictate things. Things have to go through him. Whether he's playing in Teo Hernandez wide, whether he's finding Giroud in some spaces, or whether he just gets dangerous on corner kicks and on set pieces. This for Milan to win, this has to be a big Sandro Tonali game. Olivier Giroud has to be elite in his hold-up play. I say this about every derby with Olivier Giroud in it. He has to be absolutely elite in his hold-up play because Francesco Acerbi has been brilliant.
Yes.
At defending center forwards in this competition. Gonzalo Ramos in the quarterfinals, Mehdi Taremi in the last 16. He has had to confront the combination of defenders have had to confront Lewandowski in the group stage. So they're not going to be particularly scared of seeing Giroud. So Giroud is going to have to come up with something exceptional. If those things happen, then I can give Milan a lead going into the second leg with this being their home game. So for those of you that have not watched Milan derbies in the past, in recent history, you're going to love if Dumfries starts for Inter. And the game within the game between Dumfries and Teo. Those two, I swear I totally believe this. They hate each other.
Yeah.
They hate each other, and they're going to go at each other like crazy. That's going to be a fun game within a game. So, but I see the Tonali dictating things through the midfield as much as he possibly can. I see Inter having more of the ball, Pioli being patient, trying not to concede anything. And if he's fit enough, Leao comes on, okay, to try to help change the game, okay? Or if Milan can get an advantage, okay, and by advantage I mean 1-0 lead, and I think even if a game gets to if it's 1-1 by around the 70th minute, Leao never gets in.
Yeah, exactly.
I think anything where it's level or Milan have an advantage, Leao is not going to play in this game tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Down a goal, you probably see him.
Down a goal, he may take his chances. So, but it'll be a spectacle. I think the city of Milan is going to show out tomorrow, and they will ultimately be the biggest winner. And I'm going to be a homer. I think Milan are going to get an odd goal in this game, and they're going to beat Inter 1-0. So they're going to take a 1-0 lead. They're going to take a 1-0 lead to the San Siro. Milan have the best goalkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
They have the one, and Inter have Çalhanoğlu. They have Barella. But this is the Sandro Tonali steps up and becomes a man game. And that's how Milan take a 1-0 lead to the second leg.
Maybe it's a Catalare winner. Who knows? You go into legend. Yeah, no, I think both Anthony and I predicted 1-1 in our preview pod.
I should say Brozovic too. To Eduardo's point, Brozovic is a Milan killer. By the way,
he's a Milan killer, as is Joaquin Correa. He wasn't a pass. But I do think it's an odd goal coming out from somewhere. I would not be surprised to see a Salamakers or a Messias goal or a Krunic goal for Milan. But 1-1 I think is a draw, and going into the second leg, it's bold. You said predicting Milan to win. And going to the second leg, it's going to be all to play for. It's going to be entertaining. Like I said, hopefully the CBS Sports Golazo shows the game from the warm-ups, because you want to see the tifos in full effect both games. And then when they show the replay, for heaven's sake, please show the pregame and show the Champions League stuff, because you need to see the tifos. I mean, that you can't have a derby without tifos. Yeah.
And I think I will reinforce my prediction, because if I just look at this competition and I look at the knockout stages as a whole, okay, Inter deserved to be to the semifinals, but they were really lucky to escape Porto without conceding. Porto had a boatload of chances all over the pitch in the second leg, and Inter were able to find a way to defuse it. Benfica, the 3-3 game in the second leg, gives me some concern. I don't think Inter never were really uncomfortable at any point in that second leg, but that's enough to say there's some cracks. Okay, where I think that Milan are comfortable getting this into a rock fight now, because they've been playing that way a lot against big teams over the last several weeks.
And I think Inter had the slight advantage because their goal scoring has been much better than Milan's as of late, and so that's why I think it's a tight affair. But I think the slight advantage has to go to Inter solely on the goal scoring potential. Not that Milan can't score; they did score 4 against Napoli, but in Champions League, it seems like Inter played at another extra level. They played well defensively, but they have the offensive spark as well that Milan's been lacking. So we'll see. It's going to be fantastic for football.
How Milan deal with the 2-striker attack of Inter, because they don't see it a lot. I mean, they really only see it when they play Inter. Is also gonna decide some things. So, but it's gonna be a spectacle. I mean, to everybody's comments, it's gonna be physical. It's gonna be nasty. So, you got 1-1. I'm gonna go 1-0 to Milan. They win the first leg, and then we'll see what happens in leg 2. So.
I'll ask you a fun question that Anthony and I we answered on the last pod. Who do you see getting a yellow card in this first leg?
Oof. Theo Hernandez.
Yeah, that's like one of the first names I said too.
Teo Hernandez. I don't think Davide Calabria will be as troubled dealing with Fede DeMarco. I think that he's probably. I think that Salamakers will deal with him, and I think that Calabria you could see probably being inside more, helping the center backs with the two up front to try to create the numbers there. I think they can go ahead and take their chances there because Fede's not going to really beat you in 1v1 situations. He likes to cross early. It's not often you're going to see him take a ball in line and cross. Now, when Gozens comes on, if and when Gozens comes on, that'll change the dynamic there.
Absolutely.
But, I think that I see a lot of that. So I don't see Calabria getting himself into a lot of trouble here. I could see a Barella yellow card just because he can tend to be late on his challenges.
Tamori too is one I think I'd worry about.
Yep. Just gonna
Krunic.
Tamori's gonna get very handsy with Lukaku.
Yeah.
Krunic is another one. So
Dumfries, yeah.
But yeah, Teo, Dumfries, probably the two first ones I would think of, and then I think you would look at. I don't think the back three for Inter are gonna find themselves in a situation where they're gonna get in the book.
Nope.
Especially if Leao's not playing.
Yeah, you're more likely to see Tamori and Chiar, possibly even three out of the four back four from Milan will probably get a yellow more than the Inter back three will get a yellow.
Yep.
Just how they play.
Yep. All right, boy, can't wait for tomorrow. That'll be so fun. Yeah. So,
my dentist appointment happens to be at 2:32. I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Well, get out of it. Get out of it. Right.
I'll watch it while I'm there on my phone.
Tell them to make it quick. Just tell them pull the tooth, and we'll be friends. And
let's go. Yeah, that's right.
Off you go. So, all right. Let's. There's other Serie A teams in European competition still, so we should probably talk about them too.
Yeah.
Both Serie A teams in the year, all of them are at home on Thursday, actually, which is interesting. Juventus hosting Sevilla in the Europa League semifinal. The other semifinal with Roma hosting Bayer Leverkusen. So let me start with Juve. This is low-hanging fruit to be saying this, but they have to take a lead to Sevilla. Sevilla are good at home, and historically are good at home in Europe. And Juve have not been a very good away team in any competition this season. Winning 2-0 at Atalanta doesn't necessarily make me feel better about them. So they gutted out a 1-1 draw at Sporting, which maybe kind of showed some signs of improvement in terms of away form in big games. But they've got to come out of – they've got to get this to – the Sanchez Pizjuan with an advantage if they're going to get to the final.
I agree. This is going to be, of the two games, this is the most difficult test for an Italian team. Sevilla are the kings of Europa League as Real Madrid are of Champions League. And they're going to have to play a flawless game. I think the stars have to come out. Di Maria is going to have to be the one who's going to have to be the catalyst for the offense. Defensively, they're going to have to be stout. Midfield is going to have to play above the expectations. It's going to be a difficult game. That said, I think Allegri is one of the masterminds in Europe in terms of how he dictates these kind of games. He is also a cup manager, knows how to play these kind of games, and he's going to tinker enough where he's going to be able to not completely shut down Sevilla, but do enough where maybe they can get a result going. And I agree with you. They need a result going to Sevilla. I'm going to be bold in this one and say, I'm going to say Juve win 2-1 at home.
Okay. So you're going to give Sevilla a goal.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go 2-0 to Juve.
Okay.
Again, Sevilla does have the win over Athletic Club to hang their hat on. They did come from behind to draw Manchester United. But looking at some of these other away matches, you go back a few weeks ago losing at Getafe, but then the away form for them has been good lately, but it's been deceiving because it's been against more bottom half teams in Spain. But they've got to take a 2-0 lead I think they can go to Spain very comfortably and get what they need to get to the final. And I think they can do that here. I think that, Sevilla's had a run of some games here where they haven't, seen a team. And let's face it, this is still a good Juve team.
Oh yeah.
They haven't seen, aside from Manchester United, they really haven't seen. They lately haven't seen an opponent that's at Juventus's level.
Sure.
Okay, except for Man United. All right, and I think that Man United kind of beat themselves in a way. But
You gotta mention that the aura of Sevilla in the Europa League plays some part in it mentally. I think you're gonna say this team is freaking won how many freaking Europa League titles? Their team we have to worry about. And I think that'll be in the back of their minds. Maybe not so much Allegri, but the players. I think, and that's where you can have lapses in judgment at times and try to be too perfect, and then you cause a turnover, and boom, there you go, wide open chance against Chesney.
But you don't have to beat the shirt. Nope. You have to beat the men that are wearing it.
That's what Allegri should tell them.
Yep. You don't have to beat the mystique of Sevilla. You just have to beat the men that are going to be on the pitch.
Right.
So, Roma and Bayer Leverkusen. Leverkusen they come off a stinker against Köln at the weekend. They struggled. They couldn't get goals at Union Berlin. If Leverkusen find Union Berlin challenging to score on, they're going to find Roma challenging to score on. Is kind of the opinion that I have here. But plenty of talent on this Leverkusen side. I'm a big fan of Moussa Diaby. I think Florian Wirtz is like the next German technician. For future German national teams. I like both of those players a lot. They've got good wingbacks in Frimpong and Bakker. And they've got some talent. They've got some talent all over the pitch. Adli has been coming on for them in the attack. So there's going to be some things that they're going to be able to throw at Roma. But ultimately, they're kind of hitting the skids maybe just a little bit at a bad time. And a Roma team that might just be singularly focused on this competition. I'm probably showing a lot of Italian bias here in these predictions, but try to convince me otherwise. I think Roma win the first leg, but I think they win 2-1. I think Leverkusen find their way to a goal because there's just too much quality up front for them not to.
Yeah, I like that scoreline. I think Xabi Alonso's done marvelous things with Leverkusen, completely turned their season around from being a bottom table team to fighting for a European spot, obviously in the semifinals of the Europa League. He's going to have this team ready. He is obviously a world-class midfielder. He's been in the biggest games that there are. So he'll have his team ready with the right mentality. But again, this is a Jose Mourinho team, a team that has experience in a cup, a team that won a European title last season. They're not going to be afraid of that. And I think they're going to be ready to play. I like the scoreline of 2-1. It's going to be hard to not keep Leverkusen out, but I think Roma are good enough that they're going to score a couple goals themselves. Defensively, they've been playing really well in Europa League. The attack is there when they need it. El Shaarawy's come up big at times when they needed him. Obviously, you got Tammy Abraham and Paulo Dybala, who's the catalyst there. But will he be fit? I think that's the main key. The main key for me is like if Dybala can stay healthy through both legs, Roma is going to progress. Now, if he's unavailable or injured or can't be a big contributor to this team, that's where it gets a little dicey. Roma, I still think, have the advantage, but overall, it's going to be hard to beat a Jose Mourinho team at this stage of a competition with a team that has already been there with him last year, and they know how to win. They have that spine we talked about earlier, right? They have that European spine. They know they don't get frazzled these kind of moments at right now we see. So, yeah, Roma 2-1 victory.
Okay, 2-1 is where we both go. So then finally to the Conference League, Fiorentina playing host to Basel. If you are not familiar with this Basel team this season, I'll give you a background and I'll kind of give you something on the three players that you probably have to concern yourself with. First of all, up front, Zeki Amdouni, who's a pretty frequent goal scorer for them. He's got 8 goals just in 28 played in the Swiss Super League. But behind him, very talented midfield playmaker in Darian Malis, who has got 4 goals and 6 assists. Amdouni, in fact, has 6 goals in 9 Conference League games too. So pretty strong scoring record. So a guy that can definitely be a threat. And a familiar name to us, Riccardo Calafiori, on loan from Roma, playing over there. Playing on the wing back. So some decent players. Basel has been a bit of a fixture in European competitions over the years. They have found their way to last 16s of the Champions League, but we're not playing past Basel teams. And I think that you have a Fiorentina that is focused on this competition, focused on winning Coppa Italia, seeing if they can pull off a cup double this season, which they can, which they're capable of. It's at the Artemio Franchi. It is Fiorentina's biggest game in quite some time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Kind of until the Coppa Italia takes place. And I think they're going to treat it accordingly. I think that 11 against 11, Fiorentina is just more talented. I'm going to go 3-1 in the first leg for La Viola.
Yeah, that's actually a great shot. I was leaning toward the same thing. I think the talent is superior is a strong word, but I want to say they're superior. I think also with Vincenzo Italiano, he's proven himself. We mentioned Pioli, we mentioned Inzaghi, we mentioned Allegri. They're all cup managers. Vincenzo Italiano is a cup manager. He's shown it with Fiorentina this season, not only in Coppa Italia but also in the Conference League as well. He's figured it out, and our Fiorentina's arguably played their best ball when they've been in the knockout stages of the Conference League, and all of a sudden they figured out how to play both in all the leagues that they play in. I think they're going to be able to play, and they seem to play with less of a chip on their shoulder and less stress. The stress of Serie A with all the parity of the teams, the big teams, that there's a lot of them in Serie A, and it seems to play with a carefree style in Conference League, and it's shown with all the goals that they're scoring. They're scoring for fun.
Yeah,
I would not. I think Fiorentina are going to score 3 goals. I really do. And I might just give Basel 1, like you said, just because. Why not? The team that have gotten some results. They got some good players on their team, and it's very possible. So I say 3-1. I like Fiorentina's shot there, and I think they have a very good chance to make it to the finals would be a very good opponent either way.
For sure. So that is our European roundup. Give you all 4 games to look forward to here over the next couple of days. So we've gotten through all the Calcio. Now let's have a little fun with it and get ready for the world's most popular hashtag game. It's time for Who Won Calcio Twitter. Richard, lead it off.
Yeah, I'm going to lead it off, especially on this first one. So our friend Saturnion comes up with Milan played today, but all 3 Belgian blowjob brothers are predicted to start an attack. Of course, he's talking about De Catalare, Origi, and Salamakers. Yeah, Salamakers scored, but then the goal got taken away. So,
all right, moving on. This was nominated by at Beto Acevedo. It is at Huyon81. I think Beppe just came.
God.
Okay, Calcio Twitter, come on.
Oh, come on.
Belgian blowjob and come on.
Already started off with the wrong foot. Okay. This one comes from Nemaser. The whole Milan team trying to get the Catalare to score a goal.
That's more like it.
Yeah.
That's more like it.
And he misses
like
anyway.
All right, that's the leader in the clubhouse. Now moving on to our friends at Men in Blazers on the Calcio Twitter. Napoli fans saving pieces of Udinese turf on which they won the title. Football, a sport so powerful it will cause grown adults to dig up pieces of turf and save them in bags.
All right. Moving on. Matt Santangelo says Romagnoli walking into the Milan locker room at full time after doing his part to help with the top 4.
We'll never forget Roy Williams.
Oh, Roy Williams. Good video.
Okay, Art Vandalay, at Tony Malassi, another Anthony nominee. Insigne arriving to collect the Scudetto winner's medal.
Hold up, guys. I'm here. Oh, my gosh. All right. Vataling says Kiara Palulu, and it's Stewart is welcoming Milan Inter here. There's all the other teams. First class. City's there. Mr. Peen. Real Madrid. It's like, all right. Anyway, you watched the full video there, but that's funny there.
All right, we get the gist, right?
Yep.
That was from. All right, so that's up there. Okay, so moving on. At Uncle Sharma replying to La Machachi by Milan Twitter. Pioli is on fire.
It's Milan fans saying how much better their team is, and Napoli obviously much better. Cacasvelia.
That's a little. I don't know. I'm still on. I'm still. It's still necessary for me. I don't know.
All right.
What do you think?
All right. Yeah, it's there. It's there. Last one. It's Maradona talking about Salamanca.
Le reconozco a Cristiano es que cuando el equipo lo necesita, está. Eso sí lo tiene. Y ojo que después del Flaco Cruz, no hubo muchos jugadores que lo tenían.
It's supposedly Maradona talking about Salamanca's being as good as Cruyff and one of the best ever. But obviously, it's not. He's talking about Cristiano Ronaldo. So.
All right. Well, we got to pick a winner here.
Yeah.
I think it's still Nemesis for me.
Yeah. It's simple. It's short. You get the point. You can't score no matter what they do. Yeah, we'll go with that. Head of the derby.
Right.
You got to give Milan an advantage somehow, right? So here we go. And it would be
is that his first? Is this his first win? We've had him as a nominee a few times.
He might be. I don't remember. Maybe this is first or second win. I don't know. So.
All right. Anyway. So that is on. That is being tweeted right now. So anything else we need to add for the people?
Sorry, I was reading some of the comments here. Well, yeah, first off, I want to say make sure you follow the Calcio guys. Thank you to Gianni for helping out with Frank's absence last week. So definitely give him a follow. Give the Calcio guys a follow. Those are fantastic guys there. Also give Interworldwide, Football Worldwide, and our friend Anthony Prevetra a follow. Anthony joined me on the early edition, the Australian edition of Serie A Sit Down, where we discussed the derby for tomorrow. And so thank you to Anthony once again. Fun chat, a nice hour-long chat about the derby tomorrow. So if you haven't watched that yet, watch this again if you want, and then go watch that. Definitely got in-depth about the game tomorrow, what to expect. And yeah, that's it for my shout-outs, I guess, for right now.
Definitely check out that preview. Give yourself a good primer for the game tomorrow. It was excellent by Richard and Anthony. So we're going to put a bow on this edition of Serie A Sit Down. You can find us on our own channel on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud as well. We're also on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever there's podcasts. There's Serie A Sit Down. At Serie A Sit Down on Twitter, on Instagram. Follow us there. Drop some comments on questions or hashtag Who Won Calcio Twitter nominees. Those go to Twitter. Please keep them clean. Don't be like the first two guys in today's batch. And we'll give it a read. So also you can find us on Facebook. Here on the YouTube channel, if you are watching us for the first time and you like the content, please subscribe. Please drop a like. Hit that notification bell so that you can get a heads up from us when we go back on the air or if we do a video drop. SerieASitdown.com, your website for all things Serie A and Calcio. Check it out. So you can follow me at FTC_21. You can follow Richard at R_KHARMAN. Please follow us. We have a lot to share, and we certainly interact with the fans through the Twitter machine. So at least I do. So And I'll even get in a fight with you if I don't like what you have to say. So,
Nice.
So that's that. Next week's programming to be determined. We're trying to sort through some personal schedules, work related and medical related and otherwise. So hang tight with us, and we'll let you know what we come out with next week. But until then, thank you all, everyone in the chat. Thank you guys for taking part. Thank you for your comments and questions. Appreciate you guys as always. And as always, make sure you tell your paisans about us. Ciao.